The selfish selflessness paradox. You're standing at a crossroads. On one path is everything you think you need, your goals, your dreams, your happiness. On the other, someone else's struggle. You hesitate. The first road feels instinctively right. Isn't that what life is about? Taking care of yourself first? But then something tugs at you. A quiet voice, almost imperceptible, suggesting that maybe the answer lies in helping someone else. You take the second path, not quite knowing why, and discover something surprising. The act of giving away your time, your effort, your care fills you in ways you never imagined. In giving, you paradoxically receive. This is the selfish selflessness paradox. It defies logic and yet feels undeniably true. The more you focus on others' well-being, the more fulfilled you become. It's not about sacrificing yourself. It's about discovering that helping others doesn't drain you. It enriches you. Think back to a time when you genuinely helped someone. Maybe you lent a listening ear when a friend was breaking under the weight of life, or perhaps you offered a stranger a moment of kindness. Remember how it felt afterward? That warm glow, like you'd done something meaningful, even if no one else noticed? What is that feeling? Why does it exist? You gave away your energy, your time, your resources. By all accounts, you should feel less wealthy, less rested, less you, yet you feel more. The paradox lies in the fundamental mismatch between what we assume will make us happy and what actually does. You're wired to think that meeting your own needs, earning more money, achieving personal success, or ticking off your bucket list should lead to fulfillment. Society reinforces this idea at every turn. Look out for number one, they say. You can't pour from an empty cup, but the paradox turns this notion on its head. Sometimes filling someone else's cup is precisely what replenishes your own. Science backs this up. Studies show that acts of generosity trigger your brain's reward system, releasing endorphins and dopamine, the same chemicals responsible for joy. Giving connects you to something larger than yourself, a sense of purpose that's hard to find in selfish pursuits. Yet the paradox deepens when you realize this effect only works when your intentions are genuine. If you help someone purely to feel good about yourself, the fulfillment is fleeting, hollow. Real selflessness, it seems, demands sincerity, even as it rewards you with the deepest kind of joy. But why does this work? At its core, the paradox reveals something profound about human nature. We are not solitary beings. Your happiness is tied to others in ways you can't fully see. By lifting someone else's burden, you lighten your own. By creating joy for another, you plant seeds of joy within yourself. It's as though life has a hidden algorithm. When you give freely, life gives back. This isn't to say the paradox is easy. Giving can be uncomfortable. It demands vulnerability and effort. Imagine volunteering your time when you're already exhausted, or offering money to someone in need when you're not sure you can spare it. Your first instinct might scream, "Don't, you'll only deplete yourself." But time and again, those who give find that what they gain, connection, purpose, even unexpected opportunities, far outweighs what they gave. The paradox also raises a tough question. Are humans ever truly selfless? If helping others makes you feel good, is it selfish to pursue that feeling? Some argue that all acts of kindness are inherently selfish because they satisfy a need within you. But does that make them any less valuable? Perhaps the paradox teaches us that selfishness and selflessness aren't opposites at all. Instead, they're two sides of the same coin, endlessly looping into each other. So what's the lesson here? It's not that you should abandon your own needs or give until you're empty. It's that true fulfillment often arises from a balance, tending to yourself while being open to the needs of others. The paradox doesn't ask you to choose between selfishness and selflessness. It invites you to see how interconnected they are. When you help others, you're not just fixing their problems, you're reshaping your own world. You're reminding yourself of your place in a greater whole, where joy is something shared, not hoarded. The paradox of selfish selflessness is a call to step out of your own shadow, to give without expectation, and in doing so, to uncover a richness that no selfish act could ever provide. Because in giving, you're not losing, you're finding yourself. The consciousness paradox. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about the thoughts racing through your mind, the memories flashing behind your eyelids, and the emotions rising like waves. Now open them. The world returns, vibrant and tangible, yet somehow filtered through this strange, unseen thing we call consciousness. It feels so intimate, so undeniable, and yet, what is it really? How can a collection of neurons and electrical impulses, the physical stuff of your brain, create the rich, immaterial world of thoughts, feelings, and awareness? This is the consciousness paradox, a riddle that sits at the edge of science and philosophy, daring us to unravel it. How can something as concrete as matter give rise to something as ethereal as experience? It's a question that makes your head spin, even as the very act of pondering it demonstrates the paradox in action. Consider this. Your brain is a 3-pound organ made of cells, chemicals, and electrical signals. On paper, it's a biological machine, a powerful one, but a machine nonetheless. And yet, here you are, not just operating like a machine, but feeling, thinking, knowing that you exist. It's as though your brain has pulled off the ultimate magic trick, conjuring consciousness from physical processes. But how does it do that? Some say it's an illusion, that consciousness is just a byproduct of brain activity, a kind of emergent property, like a wave forming on the surface of the ocean. Others argue that consciousness is something entirely separate, a fundamental aspect of the universe, like space or time, that the brain simply taps into. But no matter which way you turn, the paradox refuses to yield a simple answer. To grasp the depth of this mystery, let's break it down. Imagine holding a brain in your hands. Not your brain, of course, but a brain nonetheless. You could study every neuron, every synapse, every chemical pathway. You could map out the circuits of thought and emotion with astonishing precision. And yet, no matter how much you dissect or analyze, you'd never see consciousness. You'd never find the feel of sadness, the taste of chocolate, or the spark of an idea hiding among the brain's folds. The physical and the experiential seem to inhabit entirely different worlds, yet somehow they're inseparably intertwined. The paradox deepens when you consider how consciousness shapes your reality. Your brain may be the architect of your perception, but your consciousness is the narrator. It doesn't just register the world, it interprets, colors, and even distorts it. A sunset isn't just wavelengths of light hitting your retina. It's beauty, awe, and wonder, all spun from the threads of your inner experience. But if consciousness is born from the brain, how does this internal narrator emerge from mere matter? Scientists have tried to pin down the answer. They've scanned brains, measured waves of activity, and theorized endlessly. Some point to quantum mechanics, suggesting that consciousness arises from quantum processes in the brain. Others propose that it's simply the result of complexity. a network of neurons so intricate that awareness naturally bubbles up. But none of these theories fully bridge the gap between the physical and the experiential. The question remains, how can firing neurons produce the feeling of being you? This paradox isn't just a philosophical curiosity. It cuts to the heart of what it means to be human. If consciousness is purely a product of the brain, then perhaps free will is an illusion, and your thoughts and decisions are just the mechanical output of a physical system. But if consciousness is something more, something the brain cannot fully explain, then who or what are you? The consciousness paradox forces us to confront the boundaries of our understanding. It highlights the limitations of science, which excels at describing the physical but falters when it comes to explaining the subjective. It challenges philosophy to go beyond abstraction and wrestle with the profound mystery of being. And it asks each of us to reflect on the nature of our own existence. Perhaps the paradox isn't meant to be solved. Instead, it invites us to marvel at the wonder of it all, to stand in awe of this strange, miraculous thing we call consciousness. You're not just a brain in a body. You're an experiencer of sunsets, a dreamer of dreams, a living paradox wrapped in the mystery of awareness. And maybe that's enough. Perhaps the true beauty of the consciousness paradox lies not in its resolution, but in its ability to remind us that the greatest mysteries are the ones that make us feel most alive. The free will paradox? Picture this. You're standing in line at a cafe, scanning the menu. Your eyes land on two choices, a latte or a cappuccino. You deliberate, weigh your mood, imagine the taste, and finally say, "Latte, please." It feels like a choice, doesn't it? A moment of pure autonomy, where you assert your will and decide your destiny. But then a nagging thought creeps in. Was it really my choice? This is the free will paradox. It asks a question so unsettling that it can unravel everything you think you know about yourself. If your decisions are shaped by your biology, your upbringing, or forces beyond your control, can you truly claim to be free? And if you're not, what does that mean for the way you live, love, and take responsibility for your actions? Let's peel back the layers. On the surface, free will feels obvious. You woke up today, chose your clothes, decided what to eat, and even now, you're choosing to read this. But consider for a moment what's happening behind the scenes. Your brain, a mass of neurons firing electrical signals, was shaped long before you got here. Your DNA, inherited from parents you didn't choose, dictates everything from your physical traits to your predispositions. Your environment, filled with people, culture, and experiences, has molded your preferences, fears, and instincts. When you decided on that latte, how much of it was you and how much was the culmination of everything that came before? The paradox comes to life when we confront determinism, the idea that every event, including your choices, has a cause. If every decision is the result of neurons firing in response to stimuli, and those neurons are themselves the product of biology and history, then where does freedom fit? Are you steering the ship, or are you just a passenger watching as the currents of cause and effect carry you along? Yet, here's the twist. It doesn't feel that way. You don't wake up each morning thinking, "My choices are inevitable." You feel agency. You feel the weight of responsibility when you choose kindness over cruelty, discipline over indulgence. This tension between the mechanistic logic of determinism and the undeniable experience of freedom is the beating heart of the free will paradox. Think about its implications. If free will doesn't exist, does that absolve us of responsibility? If a thief steals because of a troubled past and hardwired impulses, can they truly be blamed? Or if someone excels because they had every advantage, supportive parents, great teachers, and an innate talent, how much credit do they deserve? The paradox doesn't just challenge your understanding of choice, it reshapes how you think about accountability, justice, and fairness. But don't despair just yet. Some philosophers argue that free will and determinism might not be mutually exclusive. This idea, known as compatibilism, suggests that even if your choices are influenced by causes, they can still be yours if they align with your desires and values. You may not have chosen your biology or upbringing, but you can choose how to respond to them. In this view, freedom isn't about breaking free from cause and effect. It's about navigating it consciously, taking ownership of the hand you've been dealt. And then there's the other side of the paradox, the possibility that free will is an illusion, and yet that illusion might be necessary. Imagine living as though every action were predetermined. Would you still strive for greatness? Would you still feel the same triumph when you succeed? The same guilt when you falter? Perhaps the experience of freedom, real or not, is what drives you forward, giving life its richness and urgency. The paradox ultimately forces you to rethink what it means to be free. Maybe freedom isn't the absence of constraints, but the ability to make choices that reflect who you are, even if who you are is shaped by forces you didn't choose. And maybe, just maybe, the paradox isn't something to solve, but something to embrace, a reminder that life's deepest mysteries are often the ones that make it worth living. So, as you sip that latte, consider this. Whether your choice was truly free or the inevitable product of your life story, you're the one holding the cup. And in that moment, perhaps freedom is less about escaping the forces that shape you and more about savoring the life they've created. The infinite regress paradox. Close your eyes and picture a row of dominoes stretching endlessly in both directions. You're standing in the middle, watching one domino fall, triggering the next and the next, each topple caused by the one before it. It's mesmerizing until a question creeps in. Where did it all start? Did someone push the first domino? And if they did, who or what caused that? The further you chase the question, the more it evades you, spiraling into infinity. This is the infinite regress paradox, a riddle that stands at the crossroads of science, philosophy, and our deepest existential wonderings. It challenges the very foundations of cause and effect, asking, if everything has a cause, where does it all begin? Or does it ever begin at all? Let's step back for a moment. Every day, you navigate a world that seems orderly, logical, a world where actions have consequences, and every effect can be traced back to a cause. A river flows because of gravity. Gravity exists because of the mass of the Earth. The Earth formed because of cosmic dust and gas. The gas came from, well, where did it come from? As you trace the thread of causality further and further back, you hit a wall, or rather, a void. The paradox emerges. If everything has a cause, there must be an infinite chain of causes stretching forever. But infinity is unsettling. It feels incomplete, as though the story of existence is missing its first chapter. And so, you wonder, is there a starting point? A first cause? Or is the universe caught in an endless loop of causation with no beginning, no end, just existence? Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Some, like Aristotle, argued for a prime mover, a first cause that itself is uncaused. This prime mover would be the spark that lit the fire of existence, a cause that needs no explanation. For many, this idea feels comforting. It provides a stopping point, a way to escape the infinite regress. But it also raises a new question. If the prime mover exists, what makes it exempt from causation? Why does it get to stand outside the rules of the universe? Others suggest the paradox dissolves if you abandon the need for a starting point altogether. Perhaps the universe simply is an infinite chain of events with no beginning, but infinity isn't easy to grasp. Your mind craves closure, a tidy narrative with a clear start. How can something have no origin? How can the chain of existence stretch back forever without ever arriving at a point of creation? Science, too, offers its own interpretations. The Big Bang Theory posits a beginning, a moment when the universe exploded into being from an unimaginably dense singularity. But even this raises questions. What caused the Big Bang? Was it a random quantum fluctuation? And if so, what gave rise to the quantum field itself? No matter how far science delves, the paradox remains, whispering that the quest for an ultimate cause might never find its answer. Yet the paradox isn't just a puzzle for cosmologists and philosophers. It's a mirror reflecting your own existence. Think about your life, your choices, your identity. Every moment is shaped by the moment before it. Your beliefs, your actions, your very sense of self are the result of countless causes stretching back through time. But where does your chain begin? Are you the product of fate, shaped entirely by biology and circumstance? Or is there a first cause within you, an uncaused spark of freedom that defines who you are? The infinite regress paradox doesn't just question the origin of the universe, it forces you to confront the limits of understanding. Maybe the universe doesn't owe you an explanation. Maybe it's infinite, or cyclical, or beyond comprehension. And maybe that's okay. Instead of fixating on finding the first domino, perhaps the paradox invites you to marvel at the fact that the dominoes are falling at all. Existence is mysterious, wondrous, and deeply strange. The paradox doesn't diminish this, it deepens it, reminding you that some questions aren't meant to be answered, but explored, pondered, and lived. So here you are, caught in the middle of the chain, watching the dominoes fall. Whether it began with a prime mover, an infinite loop, or something else entirely, the paradox asks you to embrace the mystery, to find meaning not in the answer, but in the question itself. Because maybe the true beauty of the universe lies not in knowing where it all began, but in being part of the endless, miraculous chain. The paradox of control. You're gripping the reins tightly, holding on for dear life as the world around you bucks and twists. You think, if I can just manage this, steer that, and predict every possible outcome, everything will fall into place. But no matter how hard you try, things slip through your fingers like sand. Plans unravel, expectations crumble, and chaos seems to multiply with every attempt to wrestle it into submission. This is the paradox of control, a maddening truth that reveals itself every time life refuses to bend to your will. The more you try to control it, the more it spins out of control, and the harder you cling, the further away peace and mastery seem to drift. Think about the moments when life felt most chaotic. Maybe it was a project you micromanaged to the point of exhaustion, only for it to go off the rails. Or A relationship you tried to force into perfection, only to see it crack under the weight of your expectations. The harder you pushed, the more it resisted, as if life itself was pushing back, whispering, "This isn't how it works." The paradox lies in the illusion of control. You're taught to believe that if you plan enough, work hard enough, or hold on tightly enough, you can shape life exactly as you want it. But the truth is, life isn't a machine to be engineered. It's a wild river, full of unpredictable currents. The more you thrash and fight against the flow, the more it pulls you under. Ironically, the key to mastering life isn't in trying to control it, it's in learning to let go. Letting go doesn't mean giving up or being passive. It means recognizing that while you can influence life, you can't dictate it. It means accepting that uncertainty isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to embrace. Think about a time when you let go, even for a moment. Maybe it was during a conversation where you stopped trying to control how the other person saw you and simply spoke from the heart. Or a day when you surrendered your rigid schedule and let spontaneity take over. Remember how freeing it felt? How things seemed to flow more naturally, as if life was moving with you instead of against you? Science even supports this paradox. Studies on stress and performance reveal that excessive control, overthinking, overplanning, overdoing leads to burnout and decreased effectiveness. Athletes call it getting in the zone, a state where effort feels effortless and control emerges naturally from letting go of rigid control. But letting go is terrifying, isn't it? To loosen your grip feels like inviting chaos. What if everything falls apart? What if you lose everything? The paradox teaches you that the tighter you hold on, the more fragile things become. Control is brittle. Life is fluid. Mastery comes not from constraining life, but from flowing with it. The paradox of control also raises deeper questions about freedom. True freedom isn't about controlling every variable. It's about accepting life's unpredictability and trusting yourself to navigate it. Imagine standing in a storm trying to hold back the wind with your hands. Futile, right? Now imagine opening your arms, letting the wind pass through you. The storm doesn't vanish, but your relationship with it changes. This paradox doesn't mean abandoning responsibility or influence. It means knowing where your control ends and life begins. You can plant seeds, but you can't make them grow. You can steer the ship, but you can't command the sea. The paradox invites you to focus on what you can do, your effort, your attitude, your response, while releasing your grip on the outcomes. So, what's the lesson here? It's not about giving up control, but about shifting your understanding of it. Life isn't a problem to be solved or a puzzle to be completed. It's a dance, and your job isn't to choreograph every step, but to move with the rhythm, even when it changes unexpectedly. The paradox asks you to trust life's flow, to embrace its chaos without fear, and to discover that in letting go, you find the kind of mastery that control could never offer. Because in the end, life isn't something to conquer, it's something to live. And the more you let go, the more fully you can step into its beautiful, unpredictable dance. The paradox of perception. You wake up to the sound of rain tapping against your window. For a moment, you sigh, thinking about how the gloomy weather will ruin your plans. The day feels heavy, like the gray clouds outside have seeped into your mood. But then later, you see someone dancing in the rain, their face lit up with joy, their arms wide open, as if they're embracing the storm itself. You pause. Same rain, same sky, yet two completely different experiences. How can this be? This is the paradox of perception, the mind-bending reality that your world is shaped not by what happens, but by how you interpret it. What you see, hear, and feel isn't the full story. It's a version of the story, filtered through your beliefs, emotions, and mindset. Your perception creates your reality, and by changing your perception, you can transform the world you live in. At first, this sounds impossible. Surely, reality is objective, unchanging, a solid thing we all share. A sunny day is a sunny day, and rain is just rain. But think about it. The same event, a rainstorm, a job interview, a missed train can provoke wildly different reactions in different people. One sees frustration, another sees opportunity. One feels stuck, another feels liberated. Reality isn't a fixed experience. It's a mirror reflecting your inner state. The paradox lies in the fact that while we all share the same world, we each inhabit our own unique version of it. Your perception is shaped by your past experiences, your emotions, and even your biology. Think about fear, for instance. A dark alley might seem terrifying to one person, while another walks through it without a second thought. The alley hasn't changed, but the lens through which it's seen has. This isn't just philosophy, it's science. Studies show that your brain filters and interprets sensory input based on what it already expects to find. If you're convinced that people are untrustworthy, you'll notice every slight, every flaw, every reason to confirm your belief. If you believe the world is full of kindness, you'll spot the little moments of generosity that others overlook. What you focus on becomes your reality. But the paradox cuts both ways. While your perception can limit you, it can also set you free. When you shift your mindset, the world around you shifts too. The rain that once ruined your plans becomes a reason to slow down, to reflect, to appreciate the sound of water on leaves. The obstacle that felt insurmountable transforms into a challenge that fuels your growth. The paradox of perception also reveals how much power you have over your own happiness. Imagine two people standing at the base of a mountain. One sees the climb ahead and feels defeated, focusing only on the difficulty. The other looks up and feels exhilarated, imagining the view from the top. Their reality, one of struggle or one of adventure, is shaped entirely by their perception. This doesn't mean ignoring the hard truths of life or pretending everything is perfect. It means recognizing that while you can't always control what happens, you can control how you respond. Even in pain, there is room for gratitude. Even in failure, there is a lesson. The choice is yours, to see the world as a burden or as a gift. But here's where the paradox gets tricky. Changing your perception isn't easy. Your mind clings to familiar patterns, even when they cause you pain. It's why breaking free from negativity takes effort, and why embracing a new mindset can feel uncomfortable. Yet, like any skill, it's something you can practice. Start by noticing your thoughts. Are they shaping your world in ways that help you, or are they holding you back? When you face a challenge, ask yourself, is there another way to see this? Train your mind to focus on what's possible instead of what's wrong. Over time, you'll find that even small shifts in perception can create profound changes in your reality. The paradox of perception is a reminder that your experience of life isn't dictated by external events. It's shaped by the stories you tell yourself about them. change the story, and you change your world. Because the rain will fall, the mountains will rise, and the alleys will grow dark. But how you see them is up to you. In the end, your greatest freedom lies in this, not in controlling the world, but in mastering the lens through which you view it. And when you do, you'll discover that the reality you create is richer, brighter, and more full of possibility than you ever imagined. The paradox of time. You're rushing through your day, juggling tasks and glancing at the clock, trying to squeeze every ounce of productivity from the hours. The faster you move, the more time you seem to lose, slipping through your fingers like water. Then, on a quiet evening, you pause for a moment, a deep breath, a lingering look at the sunset, and suddenly, time seems to stretch. The seconds feel fuller, richer, as if they've expanded to hold more of life. This is the paradox of time, the strange truth that the harder you try to slow time down, the faster it seems to vanish. Yet when you stop chasing it and fully embrace the present moment, time begins to feel abundant. Think about the days that fly by in a blur. Maybe it's a jam-packed schedule, a long commute, or a constant stream of notifications. You're busy, but at the end of the day, it feels like no time has passed at all. Now think about a single moment when you were fully present, standing by the ocean, holding a loved one's hand, or watching a child take their first steps. That moment felt timeless, didn't it? The clock may have ticked the same, but the experience held so much more. The paradox lies in how your perception of time is shaped by attention. When you're distracted, moving from one task to the next, your mind compresses the experience into a fleeting blur. But when you're fully engaged, soaking in every detail, time seems to slow, expanding to hold the depth of your awareness. Neuroscience offers some answers. Your brain doesn't measure time like a clock. It measures it through experience. When you're on autopilot, repeating routines, scrolling through social media, your brain doesn't bother encoding much. The day feels shorter because there's less to remember. But when you're immersed in something new or meaningful, your brain takes more snapshots, creating the sense that time is stretching. This paradox becomes even clearer as you age. Remember how summers felt endless as a child, how weeks of vacation felt like a lifetime. As you grow older, time speeds up, not because it actually moves faster, but because life becomes more routine. Each year is a smaller fraction of your total experience, and fewer new memories are made to slow down the flow. But the paradox doesn't have to be your enemy. It holds a powerful lesson. The key to expanding time isn't slowing the clock. It's living fully in the present. When you let go of trying to control time and focus instead on savoring the moment, life feels richer, fuller, and longer. It's not about doing more, it's about being more. Imagine a lazy afternoon where you let yourself truly relax, noticing the warmth of the sun, the rhythm of your breath, the sound of the wind, or a conversation where you listen deeply without thinking of what to say next. These moments don't just feel good, they expand your perception of time, filling it with meaning. But this isn't easy in a world that glorifies speed and productivity. You're taught to believe that cramming your schedule, multitasking, and rushing through life will somehow give you more time. The paradox teaches the opposite. The more you chase time, the faster it eludes you. True abundance comes not from racing the clock, but from stepping out of its shadow. So, how do you live this paradox? Start by slowing down, not time itself, but your relationship with it. Take a break from the endless rush. Pay attention to the small, beautiful details of your day, the texture of your morning coffee, the way sunlight filters through the window, the sound of laughter in the distance. Embrace novelty, seek out experiences that pull you out of routine, and be fully present for them. The paradox also challenges you to rethink what it means to spend time. It's not about squeezing every second dry, but about investing your attention in what truly matters. A single hour spent fully engaged with loved ones can feel more expansive than an entire day lost in distractions. In the end, the paradox of time isn't about controlling the clock. It's about mastering your awareness. Time will keep ticking, but how you experience it is entirely up to you. When you stop chasing it and start living it, time transforms. It slows, expands, and reveals its true richness. A reminder that life isn't measured in minutes, but in the moments you fully inhabit. The paradox of success. You set a goal, pour your energy into it, and finally achieve it. That first taste of success feels intoxicating. Validation for your hard work, a milestone that marks progress. You exhale, let yourself bask in the comfort of your accomplishments, and think, I've made it. But then something strange happens. The fire that once drove you starts to dim. The hunger to push further fades, and without realizing it, you find yourself stuck, coasting in the very comfort you worked so hard to achieve. This is the paradox of success, the unsettling reality that while success can elevate you, it can also trap you. The comfort it brings, once so hard-earned, can lull you into complacency, making you resistant to the discomfort and risks that fuel true growth. Think about it. How often have you seen this play out? A company achieves market dominance, only to falter because it stops innovating. An athlete wins a championship but loses their edge in the seasons that follow. An individual reaches a career milestone but feels stuck, unmotivated, unsure of what comes next. Success, as satisfying as it is, has a way of becoming its own obstacle. At its core, the paradox lies in the nature of comfort. As humans, you're wired to seek it. Success gives you the luxury to relax, to feel secure. But growth doesn't happen in comfort zones. Growth happens when you stretch, when you struggle, when you take risks that could lead to failure. The very conditions that bring success, effort, resilience, the willingness to fail, often disappear once success is achieved. The paradox isn't just external, it's deeply psychological. Success can change how you see yourself. You might cling to the identity your success has given you, the winner, the expert, the accomplished one, and avoid anything that could threaten that image. You stop taking risks because you're afraid to lose what you've gained. But this fear keeps you stagnant, locking you in a cycle of diminishing returns. Ironically, the same success that once felt like freedom can become a cage. The path forward demands stepping back into discomfort, confronting uncertainty, and risking failure all over again. This is why some of the most successful people deliberately seek out challenges, even when they don't have to. They understand that comfort is seductive, but it's also the enemy of progress. Think about the entrepreneurs who risk their fortunes on new ventures after already achieving wealth, or the artists who reinvent their style at the peak of their careers. They don't do it because it's easy. They do it because staying still feels like a greater risk. They know that success isn't a destination, it's a stepping stone to the next climb. But the paradox doesn't mean you can never enjoy your success. Comfort isn't the enemy. It's what you do with it that matters. Success can be a platform, a moment to recharge and reflect, but it shouldn't become a resting place. True growth comes from using your success as a launch pad for new risks, new challenges, and new horizons. So, how do you navigate the paradox of success? Start by redefining what success means to you. If you see it as an endpoint, you'll stop moving forward. But if you see it as part of a journey, you'll stay open to growth. Embrace the discomfort that comes with chasing new goals, even when you don't have to. Seek out challenges that scare you, not because you need to prove yourself, but because they keep you alive, engaged, and growing. The paradox also asks you to let go of the fear of failure. Success can make you cautious, afraid of losing what you've built, but stagnation is the real danger. Failure, when embraced, isn't the opposite of success. It's a necessary part of it. Every failure teaches you, sharpens you, and prepares you for the next level. In the end, the paradox of success reminds you that comfort is a gift, but it's not the goal. Growth requires risk, and risk requires stepping out of the safety net success provides. It's a cycle, one that demands courage, humility, and the willingness to start again, no matter how high you've already climbed. So celebrate your successes, but don't let them define you. Stay hungry, stay curious, and remember that the true measure of success isn't in what you've achieved. It's in how much you're willing to keep growing. Because the moment you stop chasing discomfort, you stop evolving. And evolution, messy and uncertain as it is where life's richest rewards are found. The paradox of happiness. You tell yourself, I'll be happy when you get the promotion, the perfect relationship, the dream vacation, or finally achieve the goal you've been working toward. You chase it, push for it, and picture the moment when everything will feel complete. But when you get there, the feeling doesn't last. Happiness slips through your fingers, leaving you asking, is this all there is? This is the paradox of happiness. The more you pursue it, the more it seems to evade you. The harder you chase the idea of happiness, the further it drifts from your grasp. And yet, when you stop running after it, when you focus on presence, gratitude, and the simple act of living, happiness has a way of sneaking up on you. At its core, this paradox challenges one of the deepest assumptions about life, that happiness is a destination you can reach. You're told to set goals, work hard, and achieve success because these things will bring joy. But happiness isn't something you can capture or achieve. It's not a finish line. It's a state of being. And the more you tie it to external milestones, the more fragile it becomes. Think of the times you've truly felt happy. Were they moments of grand achievement or quiet, unexpected ones? The laughter of a loved one, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the stillness of a morning cup of coffee. These moments weren't planned or pursued. They simply happened. Happiness, it seems, is a byproduct of living, not the prize at the end of the race. The paradox lies in the nature of pursuit itself. When you chase happiness, you frame it as something you lack, something just out of reach. You tell yourself, I'll be happy when this happens, and in doing so, you place it in the future, creating a gap between where you are and where you think you need to be. That gap becomes the source of dissatisfaction, a constant reminder that you're not there yet. But here's the twist. Happiness isn't something you find, it's something you uncover in the present moment. When you stop obsessing over what you think you need and start appreciating what you already have, happiness begins to emerge. Gratitude is the antidote to the chase. It shifts your focus from what's missing to what's abundant, opening the door to contentment. The paradox of happiness also asks you to let go of perfection. Life is messy, unpredictable, and filled with both joy and sorrow. If you tie your happiness to an idealized version of how things should be, you'll spend your life waiting. True happiness comes not from perfection, but from embracing life as it is, flaws, uncertainties, and all. This paradox isn't just philosophical, it's deeply psychological. Studies show that people who prioritize happiness as a goal often report feeling less happy. Why? Because they set themselves up for disappointment, constantly measuring their feelings against an impossible standard. In contrast, people who focus on meaning, connection, and mindfulness often experience deeper, more lasting joy. So, how do you live the paradox of happiness? Start by letting go of the idea that it's something to achieve. Happiness isn't in the next promotion, the next purchase, or even the next relationship. It's in the moments you're living right now, if you're willing to notice them. Practice gratitude, not as a chore, but as a way of opening your eyes to what's already here. Learn to find joy in the process, not just the outcome. The act of creating, exploring, or connecting can be fulfilling in itself, regardless of where it leads. And most importantly, embrace the full spectrum of emotions. Happiness isn't the absence of sadness or struggle, it's the richness of experiencing life fully, knowing that the lows make the highs even sweeter. The paradox teaches you that happiness is a paradox precisely because it thrives in simplicity. It's found not in grand pursuits, but in the small, quiet moments you often overlook. It's not in having everything, but in wanting less. So stop chasing happiness. Instead, live fully, love deeply, and notice the beauty in the ordinary. When you let go of the pursuit, happiness will find you in the laughter of a friend, the rustle of leaves, or the peace of a quiet moment. And when it does, you'll realize it was never something to be chased. It was something to be lived all along. The paradox of love. You meet someone who lights up your world. They make you feel alive, seen, and cherished. The connection feels rare, precious, something you want to hold on to forever. But then fear creeps in. What if they drift away? What if you lose them? So you tighten your grip, trying to hold them closer, to make the bond unbreakable. And yet, the tighter you hold, the more they pull away. This is the paradox of love, the unsettling truth that love cannot be controlled or possessed. The more you try to confine it, the more it slips through your fingers. True love isn't about ownership or control. It's about freedom. Only in letting go do you create the space for love to grow. Think about it. Love is inherently vulnerable. To love someone is to open yourself up, to share your heart without guarantees. It's exhilarating, but also terrifying. That fear of loss can make you cling tighter, mistaking control for security. You want certainty, reassurance that this connection will last forever. But love doesn't thrive in cages. It thrives in the open air of trust and autonomy. When you try to possess someone, you're not holding on to them. You're holding on to your fear. You might think you're protecting the relationship, but what you're really doing is building walls, and love, by its nature, resists walls. It needs freedom to breathe, to evolve, to deepen. The paradox becomes even clearer when you consider how love works. True love isn't about taking, it's about giving. It's not about demanding someone's time or affection, it's about offering your own. The more you try to control someone, the more they feel trapped, as though their love is a duty rather than a choice. And love that isn't freely given isn't love at all. It's obligation. Think about the times you felt most deeply loved. Was it when someone tried to dictate your every move, or was it when they trusted you, supported you, and gave you the freedom to be yourself? Love flourishes in freedom because it's in freedom that you choose each other over and over again. But this paradox doesn't mean love is passive. Letting go doesn't mean neglecting the relationship or taking it for granted. It means trusting the bond you've built, allowing it to grow naturally without forcing it into a shape it was never meant to take. It means focusing on the connection, not the control. The paradox of love also reveals a deeper truth about control itself. The need to control often stems from insecurity, fears of being unworthy, of being abandoned, of losing what matters most. But control doesn't heal those fears. It amplifies them. It makes love conditional, turning a beautiful connection into a power struggle. Instead, the paradox invites you to let go of control and embrace vulnerability. To love is to risk. There are no guarantees, no foolproof ways to protect yourself from loss. But it's in that risk, that openness, that love becomes real. The walls you tear down to let love in are the same walls that allow it to thrive. So, how do you live the paradox of love? Start by shifting your focus from what you need to what you can give. Love isn't about possessing someone. It's about creating a space where they feel free to stay. Trust them enough to let them be themselves, even if it means they sometimes drift away. True love isn't threatened by distance. It's strengthened by trust. Learn to embrace the uncertainty of love. Instead of clinging to guarantees, lean into the beauty of the moment. Love isn't about forever. It's about now. And when you show up fully, without trying to control the future, you create a relationship that's not just secure, but alive. The paradox also reminds you that love starts with yourself. When you feel whole and worthy on your own, you're less likely to seek control or validation from others. You can love freely, without fear, because you know that your worth doesn't depend on someone else staying. In the end, the paradox of love teaches you that love isn't something you own. It's something you share. The more you let go, the more room you create for love to flourish. And in that freedom, love becomes what it was always meant to be: a choice, a gift, a force that grows stronger, not weaker, when it's given away. So loosen your grip, open your heart, and let love be what it is: wild, unpredictable, and endlessly beautiful. In doing so, you'll find that the love you feared losing was never yours to possess, but yours to cherish. In all its imperfect, fleeting, and magnificent glory, the paradox of strength. You stand tall, shoulders squared, determined to project an image of unshakable strength. You tell yourself, I can handle this. I don't need help. I'm fine. To admit weakness feels like failure, like exposing a crack in your armor that the world might exploit. So you push on, hiding your struggles, clinging to the illusion of invulnerability. But deep down, you feel the weight of it all. The more you pretend to be unbreakable, the more fragile you become. This is the paradox of strength. the counterintuitive truth that real strength doesn't come from pretending to have none of life's burdens. It comes from acknowledging your weaknesses, embracing your humanity, and finding the courage to be vulnerable. Think of a tree in a storm. The one that stands rigid, refusing to bend, is the one most likely to snap. But the tree that sways with the wind, yielding to its force, survives. Strength isn't about resisting everything. It's about adapting, leaning into the challenges, and growing stronger through them. The paradox emerges from a misconception that strength is the absence of weakness. You're taught to believe that being strong means never faltering, never doubting, never needing anyone. But this belief isolates you. It traps you in a lonely battle against yourself, where the fear of appearing weak becomes a prison. True strength lies in the opposite. When you admit your struggles, you open the door to connection, support, and growth. Acknowledging weakness isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of self-awareness. It's the first step toward improvement, a way of saying, this is where I am, but it's not where I'll stay. Think about the people you admire most. Are they the ones who always seem perfect, untouched by life's hardships? Or are they the ones who admit their challenges, who share their struggles with honesty and grace? Vulnerability doesn't diminish strength. It enhances it. It makes you relatable, authentic, and resilient. The paradox also plays out in how you approach challenges. Pretending you're invulnerable often leads to avoidance. You shy away from difficult conversations, push down uncomfortable emotions, or refuse to seek help when you need it. But these actions don't make you stronger. They make you stuck. True strength comes from facing your fears, stepping into discomfort, and doing the hard work of growth. This isn't just an emotional truth. It's a physiological one. Stress, for example, is something everyone experiences. Pretending it doesn't affect you only compounds its impact, leading to burnout and health problems. But when you acknowledge stress and seek ways to manage it, whether through rest, connection, or asking for help, you build resilience. You don't just survive, you thrive. The paradox of strength also teaches you that your weaknesses aren't flaws to hide, but opportunities to grow. When you acknowledge a limitation, you give yourself permission to improve. You stop clinging to the exhausting facade of perfection and start building real, lasting strength. So, how do you live this paradox? Start by challenging the belief that vulnerability equals weakness. Practice honesty with yourself and others. When you're struggling, say so. When you need help, ask for it. When you fail, own it. These aren't signs of weakness. They're acts of courage. Embrace the idea that your strength doesn't lie in never breaking. It lies in how you rebuild. Every challenge, every setback, every admission of vulnerability is a chance to grow stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. And remember, strength isn't about standing alone. It's about leaning on others when you need to and offering your support in return. A chain is strongest, not because its links are perfect, but because they work together. In the end, the paradox of strength reveals a profound truth. You don't have to be unbreakable to be strong. In fact, it's your willingness to acknowledge your cracks, to show up imperfectly, that makes you truly powerful. So, let go of the armor that no longer serves you. Face your fears, embrace your humanity, and dare to be vulnerable. Because in that vulnerability, you'll find a strength that's not just enduring, it's transformative. And the more you acknowledge your weaknesses, the stronger you'll become. The paradox of silence. You walk into a room filled with chatter, each person competing to be heard. Words flow endlessly, but they feel hollow, like noise without weight. Then, someone says nothing. They pause, their silence filling the space. Suddenly, all eyes turn to them, their quiet presence commanding more attention than 1,000 voices ever could. This is the paradox of silence, the idea that saying less can make your words more powerful, that silence itself can speak louder than speech. In a world overflowing with noise, silence isn't emptiness. It's a force, a message, a statement that often communicates more than words ever could. Think about the moments when silence has hit you the hardest, the pause before a loved one says something life-changing, the quiet between notes in a beautiful piece of music, the stillness after an argument, charged with emotion. Silence isn't just an absence of sound. It's a presence, a space where meaning is amplified, where emotions resonate more deeply. The paradox lies in how you perceive silence. You're taught to equate power with speaking, to believe that filling the room with words is the way to influence others. But too many words can dilute your message. When you speak constantly, people stop listening. But when you choose your words carefully and balance them with silence, every syllable gains weight. Silence works because it forces attention. In conversation, a pause can make others lean in, curious about what comes next. It creates a sense of anticipation, making your words land with greater impact. Silence also gives you time to think, to respond rather than react, and to ensure that what you say is worth saying. But silence isn't just about holding back your words. It's about what you allow to exist in their place. Silence can show respect, giving others the space to express themselves without interruption. It can convey confidence, signaling that you're comfortable enough in your presence not to fill every void with chatter. And it can communicate emotions, love, grief, anger, that words often fail to capture. Think of the most powerful leaders, teachers, or mentors you've encountered. They weren't the ones who spoke the most. They were the ones who spoke with purpose, whose silences carried as much weight as their words. Their restraint wasn't weakness, it was strength, a recognition that sometimes the most profound truths are felt, not spoken. Yet silence is uncomfortable, isn't it? In a culture that values constant expression, silence can feel awkward, even threatening. You rush to fill it, afraid of what it might reveal, your uncertainty, your vulnerability, your lack of control. But the paradox teaches you that leaning into silence is where true power lies. Silence invites reflection, both in yourself and in others. When you allow a moment to hang in the air, it creates space for thought, for meaning to settle. It's why great speakers use pauses to emphasize their points, and why moments of quiet in a conversation can deepen the connection between two people. But silence isn't just a tool, it's also a teacher. In silence, you learn to listen, not just to words, but to what lies beneath them. You notice the subtleties of tone, body language, and unspoken feelings. Silence sharpens your perception, teaching you to hear what others might miss. Living the paradox of silence doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking with intention. Choose your words carefully, knowing that their power often lies in the silences that frame them. Embrace the discomfort of quiet moments and trust that they hold meaning beyond what words can convey. And remember, silence isn't passive, it's active. It's a way of asserting presence, of saying, I don't need to fill the space to matter. It's an act of confidence, a reminder that power isn't about volume, but about depth. So the next time you're in a conversation, resist the urge to fill every gap. Pause, reflect, let your silence do the talking, and when you do speak, let your words carry the weight of intention, backed by the power of what you didn't say. In the end, the paradox of silence teaches you that true communication isn't about saying more, it's about saying enough. In the quiet, you'll find clarity. In restraint, you'll discover power. And in the spaces between words, you'll create a resonance that lingers far longer than speech ever could. The paradox of failure. You stand at the edge of a decision, your heart pounding with doubt. You hesitate because failure feels too risky, too painful to face. What if I try and it doesn't work? What if I fall flat on my face? What will people think? The fear of failure grips you, keeping you safe in your comfort zone, but also holding you back from everything you could become. This is the paradox of failure. The counterintuitive truth that failure, which feels like the end, is actually the beginning of growth. It's the most powerful teacher, yet your fear of it often keeps you from the very lessons that lead to success. Think about a time when you failed, truly, painfully failed. Maybe it was a project that flopped, a relationship that fell apart, or a goal you didn't reach. In the moment, it stung, like a spotlight shining on your flaws. But later, when the dust settled, you realized something unexpected. You learned. The failure taught you a lesson you couldn't have learned any other way. The paradox lies in this. Failure feels like a wall, but it's actually a doorway. It forces you to confront your weaknesses, adapt, and try again. Every misstep, every setback, every moment of falling short is a stepping stone, not a dead end. But fear of failure can paralyze you. It whispers that it's safer not to try, that avoiding risk is better than facing the sting of defeat. It convinces you to play small, to stick to what you know, to avoid the uncertainty of stepping into the unknown. This fear is seductive. It keeps you comfortable, but it also keeps you stuck. The truth is, the most successful people aren't the ones who avoid failure. They're the ones who embrace it. They understand that every failure is a lesson in disguise, a chance to grow stronger, smarter, and more resilient. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. He didn't see those failures as wasted effort. He saw them as essential steps towards success. Failure also teaches you humility. It reminds you that you're not perfect, that you don't have all the answers. And that's a gift, because when you let go of the need to be flawless, you open yourself up to learning, collaboration, and growth. Failure strips away ego and replaces it with wisdom. But the paradox of failure isn't just about learning, it's about freedom. When you stop fearing failure, you unlock a new level of courage. You realize that failure isn't a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of your effort. And effort is something to be proud of, no matter the outcome. Think of a child learning to walk. They fall again and again, but they don't stop trying. They don't think of those falls as failures. They think of them as part of the process. And because they embrace the falls, they eventually learn to run. Somewhere along the way, you lose that fearlessness, replacing it with self-doubt and hesitation. The paradox reminds you to reclaim it. So how do you embrace failure? Start by reframing it. Failure isn't the opposite of success, it's a part of it. Every time you fail, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? What can I do differently next time? Treat failure as feedback, not as a verdict on your abilities. Next, take small risks. Start with something manageable and let yourself fail in a low-stakes environment. Each time you recover, you build resilience, proving to yourself that failure isn't as scary as it seems. Share your failures. Talk about them with friends, mentors, or anyone who will listen. You'll realize you're not alone. Everyone fails, and when you share your struggles, you create space for connection, growth, and even laughter. The paradox teaches you that failure isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It's the push that gets you out of your comfort zone, the spark that ignites creativity, the mirror that shows you who you really are. In the end, the paradox of failure reminds you that falling down is part of the journey. It's not about avoiding the fall. It's about learning how to get back up. Embrace failure, and you'll discover that every setback is a setup for your next breakthrough. And when you do finally succeed, it will be all the more meaningful because you earned it through the lessons failure so generously gave. The paradox of peace. You bite your tongue, forcing a smile even though something inside you feels off. You tell yourself, it's not worth it. I don't want to cause trouble. Avoiding conflict seems like the right choice, the peaceful choice. But as the unresolved tension simmers beneath the surface, resentment starts to grow. The peace you thought you were preserving feels fragile, even false. This is the paradox of peace, the counterintuitive truth that avoiding conflict doesn't bring harmony. It plants the seeds of deeper discord. True peace isn't the absence of conflict, but the result of addressing it with honesty and courage. Think about the relationships in your life. How many times have you let something go, not because it didn't matter, but because you didn't want to risk an argument? Maybe it was a friend who overstepped, a colleague who took credit for your work, or a partner whose words stung. You stayed silent, thinking that avoiding the confrontation was keeping the peace. But was it really? Avoiding conflict doesn't resolve tension. It buries it. And buried tensions don't disappear. They fester. Over time, the unspoken frustrations build, creating distance and eroding trust. What might have been a small, solvable issue grows into something far larger and harder to address. The irony is that the very act of avoiding conflict often leads to the outcome you feared most, a broken connection. The paradox lies in the fact that peace and conflict are deeply intertwined. Confronting an issue feels uncomfortable, even risky, but when done with honesty and care, it clears the air, deepens understanding, and strengthens relationships. Conflict, handled well, isn't the enemy of peace. It's its foundation. Consider the times when you've finally addressed a lingering issue with someone. The conversation may have been tense, but afterward, didn't you feel lighter? Didn't the relationship feel clearer, stronger, more authentic? That's the paradox in action. Peace comes not from avoiding the storm, but from walking through it. The paradox of peace also applies on a larger scale. History is filled with examples of conflicts that were ignored, only to erupt later in ways that caused far greater harm. When problems are swept under the rug, whether in families, communities, or nations, they don't disappear. They wait, growing in the shadows, until they can no longer be ignored. True peace comes from addressing the root causes of tension, not from pretending they don't exist. But confronting conflict doesn't mean attacking or blaming. It requires vulnerability, the willingness to listen, and the courage to express your truth without hostility. It's about creating a space where both sides can be heard and understood. This isn't easy. It takes emotional maturity and patience, but the rewards are worth it. Clarity, trust, and a sense of peace that isn't fragile or forced, but real and enduring. The paradox also reveals something about fear. Avoiding conflict often stems from the fear of rejection, of making things worse, of being seen as difficult. But that fear keeps you trapped in a cycle of pretending, silencing your needs and feelings. True peace begins when you let go of that fear and trust that honesty, even when it's hard, will lead to a better outcome than avoidance ever could. So, how do you live the paradox of peace? Start by recognizing that conflict isn't inherently bad. It's a natural part of any relationship. When you feel tension, don't ignore it. Pause, reflect, and approach it with curiosity instead of judgment. Ask yourself, what's really bothering me? How can I express this in a way that builds understanding rather than blame? When you address an issue, focus on the outcome you want. Resolution, not victory. Use I statements to express how you feel and listen with the intention of understanding, not just responding. Conflict handled this way doesn't destroy relationships, it strengthens them. And remember, peace isn't about always agreeing. It's about respecting each other enough to confront disagreements honestly and work through them together. Real peace is messy, vulnerable, and sometimes uncomfortable. But it's also deeply rewarding. In the end, the paradox of peace teaches you that avoidance isn't the path to harmony. It's the path to stagnation. True peace comes from courage, from the willingness to engage with discomfort for the sake of growth and connection. Confront your conflicts with honesty and care, and you'll find that the peace you create is stronger, deeper, and more lasting than anything avoidance could ever offer. The paradox of trust. You hesitate, caught in that familiar tension between your desire to connect and your fear of being hurt. Trusting someone feels risky. It requires you to lower your guard, to hand over a piece of yourself with no guarantees. What if they betray you? What if they take your vulnerability and use it against you? Yet, without trust, the relationship feels hollow, like a connection built on quicksand. This is the paradox of trust, the profound truth that while trusting others makes you vulnerable, it's also the foundation of every meaningful relationship. Trust is a risk, but without it, connection, love, and growth become impossible. Think about the relationships that matter most to you. At their core, they are built on trust. You trust your friends to support you, your partner to respect and love you, your colleagues to have your back. But that trust didn't come without risk. Every act of trust is a leap into the unknown, a willingness to believe in someone else despite the possibility of disappointment. The paradox lies in this tension. Trust exposes you to hurt, yet withholding trust guarantees isolation. You can't truly connect with someone if you're constantly guarded, analyzing every word and action for signs of betrayal. Real connection requires you to let go, to lean into vulnerability, and to give trust freely. But trust isn't blind. It's not about ignoring red flags or handing over your confidence to just anyone. It's a delicate balance between openness and discernment. You can't demand absolute certainty before trusting someone, but you can build trust incrementally, testing the waters with small acts of vulnerability before diving in deeper. The paradox of trust also forces you to confront your own fears. Often, the reluctance to trust isn't about the other person. It's about you. It's about the scars of past betrayals, the fear of appearing weak, or the belief that self-reliance is safer than depending on anyone else. But these fears, while protective, also keep you walled off from the very things you crave: intimacy, belonging, and support. Think about a time when you chose to trust someone, even when it felt risky. Maybe you shared a personal struggle with a friend, confided in a mentor, or leaned on a partner during a difficult moment. Didn't that trust deepen the relationship? Didn't it create a bond that was stronger because you allowed yourself to be seen? That's the paradox at work. The act of trusting someone makes you vulnerable, but it also invites them to trust you in return. Trust, when given, often multiplies. It creates a cycle of openness and reciprocity where both people feel safe enough to be their authentic selves. But what about when trust is broken? This is where the paradox becomes most painful. Betrayal cuts deeply, making you question not only the other person, but your own judgment. Yet, even here, trust can be rebuilt. It takes time, honesty, and effort, but the willingness to repair trust, even after it's been shattered, is what makes relationships resilient. The paradox also applies to how you trust yourself. If you can't trust your own judgment, your ability to navigate relationships becomes clouded. Building self-trust means honoring your instincts, learning from past experiences, and believing in your ability to handle whatever comes your way, even the risk of disappointment. So, how do you live the paradox of trust? Start by recognizing that trust isn't an all-or-nothing decision. It's a process. Begin with small acts of trust and let them build. Show up authentically and invite others to do the same. When trust is broken, don't rush to close yourself off. Instead, ask whether the relationship is worth the effort of repair. And most importantly, trust yourself. Trust that you're strong enough to face vulnerability, wise enough to recognize genuine connections, and brave enough to risk the pain of betrayal for the joy of real relationships. In the end, the paradox of trust teaches you that there are no guarantees. Trust is always a leap into the unknown, but it's a leap worth taking because the alternative, a life without connection, is far more dangerous. Trust is risky, yes, but it's also essential. It's the glue that holds relationships together, the bridge between fear and connection, and the foundation of a life rich with meaning and love. So dare to trust, even when it feels uncertain, because in that risk lies the potential for the deepest rewards. A connection that's real, a bond that's unshakable, and a life where love and trust make the vulnerability worthwhile. The paradox of generosity. You give a compliment, your time, a helping hand, and something surprising happens. Instead of feeling like you've lost something, you feel lighter, fuller, almost as if you've gained more than you gave. Then there's the opposite. When you hold back, guarding what's yours out of fear there's not enough, you feel emptier, more disconnected. It's strange, isn't it? The act of giving leaves you richer, while clinging to what you have can leave you feeling poor. This is the paradox of generosity. The more you give, the more you feel you have. Generosity doesn't deplete you, it expands you, breaking the illusion of scarcity and opening you to a world of abundance. At first, this idea seems counterintuitive. You've been taught to protect your resources, to save, to be cautious. Giving, whether it's time, energy, or money, can feel risky, like you're draining something finite. If I give too much, what will I have left for myself? But true generosity flips this logic on its head. Instead of leaving you with less, it multiplies your sense of abundance, both in tangible ways and in how you feel about your life. Think about the last time you gave freely, with no expectation of return. Maybe it was helping a friend through a tough time, volunteering for a cause you care about, or giving a heartfelt gift. Didn't it fill you with a sense of purpose, connection, even joy? That's the paradox in action. Giving doesn't just help the receiver, it transforms the giver. Joe, the paradox lies in how generosity shifts your mindset. When you give, you step out of a scarcity mentality, the belief that there's never enough, and into abundance. Instead of focusing on what you lack, you see what you have to offer. This perspective change is profound. It reminds you that wealth isn't just about material possessions. It's about relationships, meaning, and the impact you can have on others. But the paradox goes deeper. Generosity creates a ripple effect. When you give, you inspire others to give, too. Your actions remind them of their own abundance, sparking a cycle of kindness and connection. In this way, generosity doesn't just benefit individuals. It strengthens communities. It turns me into we, dissolving the isolation that often comes with clinging to what's yours. Yet the paradox isn't about giving recklessly. True generosity comes from a place of authenticity, not obligation or guilt. It's not about depleting yourself to the point of exhaustion. It's about giving in ways that feel aligned with your values and capacity. Generosity that comes from joy, not sacrifice, is the kind that sustains both you and those you help. Consider the science behind the paradox. Studies show that acts of generosity trigger a release of oxytocin, the bonding hormone, which enhances feelings of trust and connection. Giving also activates reward centers in the brain, creating a sense of happiness similar to receiving. It's as if your brain is wired to reward you for helping others, reinforcing the truth that giving is as much about you as it is about them. The paradox of generosity also teaches you that scarcity isn't just about resources, it's about mindset. You've likely met people who have very little but give freely, their generosity a testament to their inner wealth. Conversely, there are those who seem to have everything yet live in fear of losing it, hoarding what they have and feeling perpetually poor. Generosity, it turns out, is less about what you have and more about how you see what you have. So, how do you embrace this paradox? Start small. Look for opportunities to give, not just money, but time, attention, and kindness. Listen to a friend who needs support, share your expertise with someone starting out, or simply offer a smile to a stranger. Notice how these acts make you feel. And remember, generosity isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistent, intentional acts that align with your values. It's not about draining yourself to prove something. It's about filling others while also filling yourself. The paradox of generosity reminds you that life isn't a zero-sum game. The more you give, the richer your experience becomes. Scarcity fades when you realize that true abundance isn't found in holding tight. It's found in opening your heart and hands. In the end, generosity isn't just an act. It's a way of seeing the world. It's the belief that there's always more to give, always more to share, and always more to be gained by lifting others up. And as you embrace this paradox, you'll find that the greatest gift of all is the one you give yourself, the freedom to live with an open, abundant heart. The paradox of attention. You find yourself in a room, hoping to be noticed. Maybe it's by someone you admire, a group you want to impress, or an audience you're trying to captivate. You adjust your posture, choose your words carefully, even exaggerate parts of yourself to stand out. But the harder you try, the less it seems to work. The attention you crave feels just out of reach, slipping further away the more you chase it. This is the paradox of attention, the counterintuitive truth that the more effort you put into gaining someone's attention, the less likely you are to capture it. True attention doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from being authentic, from showing up as yourself without the need to demand or force acknowledgement. Think about the moments when someone genuinely captivated you. Was it because they tried to? Or was it because their presence felt effortless, their confidence quietly compelling? Authenticity has a way of drawing people in without fanfare. It's magnetic in a way that trying too hard can never be. The paradox lies in the nature of attention itself. When you push too hard to be noticed, your effort often reads as desperation or inauthenticity. People sense when someone is performing, and it creates distance. On the other hand, when you're comfortable in your own skin, when you speak, act, and exist without forcing anything, you become naturally intriguing. This isn't just about personal interactions, it's universal. In art, the most striking works often don't scream for attention. They quietly demand it through their depth and honesty. In leadership, the most respected figures aren't those who clamor to be seen, but those who inspire through action and integrity. The paradox also reveals something about human psychology. People are drawn to confidence, but real confidence isn't loud. It's quiet, grounded, and doesn't need validation to feel secure. When you stop chasing attention and start focusing on your values, passions, and genuine connections, attention often follows without you needing to ask for it. But why is it so hard to let go of the chase? Because wanting attention is natural. It's rooted in a human need to feel seen, valued, and understood. The paradox doesn't tell you to suppress that need. It invites you to fulfill it in a way that feels true, not forced. When you try too hard, you send a message, often unconsciously, that you don't believe you're enough as you are. That energy is what pushes people away. But when you show up authentically, without trying to manipulate the outcome, you send a different message. I'm comfortable being me, whether or not you notice. That kind of confidence draws people in like a beacon. The paradox of attention also teaches you to rethink your motivations. Are you seeking attention for validation, to fill a void, or to prove something? Or are you simply sharing who you are with the world? When attention becomes the goal, it often leads to inauthenticity. But when expression and connection are the goal, attention becomes a natural byproduct. So, how do you live this paradox? Start by letting go of the need to control how others perceive you. Focus on showing up fully, with honesty and integrity, rather than trying to shape their reactions. Lean into what makes you unique, even if it feels vulnerable. People aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to authenticity. Share your passions, your quirks, your flaws, the things that make you real. And most importantly, shift your focus outward. Instead of trying to gain attention, give it. Listen deeply, engage sincerely, and show genuine interest in others. Ironically, the less you focus on being noticed, the more you'll stand out. In the end, the paradox of attention reminds you that trying harder isn't the answer. Attention, like respect and love, is something you attract by being true to yourself, not something you force. When you stop chasing it, you create space for the kind of connection that's deeper and more lasting than any fleeting moment of acknowledgement. So step back, breathe, and trust in your own presence. You don't need to shout to be heard. The world will notice you when you show up as you truly are. And when it does, that attention will mean more, because it was never about trying. It was about being. The paradox of simplicity. You look at a perfectly balanced design, a profound piece of writing, or a solution that seems so obvious you wonder why no one thought of it sooner. It feels effortless, as if it always existed just like that. But beneath its simplicity lies hours, maybe even years of work. The creator didn't stumble upon it. They fought for it, cutting through layers of unnecessary clutter to reveal what truly matters. This is the paradox of simplicity. The surprising truth that while simplicity appears effortless, it often requires more effort than complexity. To simplify is not to take shortcuts. It's to invest the time and energy to strip away the noise and uncover the essence. Think about it. Complexity is easy. You can add layers, details, and features without much thought, but simplicity demands clarity. It forces you to ask hard questions. What is essential? What can be removed? What truly matters? It's not about doing less. It's about doing the work to make less mean more. Take a great speech as an example. The best speeches aren't the longest or the most verbose. They're the ones that deliver their message powerfully in just a few words. Think of Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Barely 2 minutes long, but its simplicity made it timeless. Yet, that brevity wasn't effortless. Every word was deliberate, every phrase considered, every unnecessary detail ruthlessly cut. The paradox lies in how simplicity is perceived. To the outside world, it looks easy, so easy that it's often undervalued. But simplicity demands discipline, focus, and the courage to let go of what isn't essential. Complexity, on the other hand, can disguise itself as effort. It looks impressive because it's packed with layers, but often those layers add confusion rather than value. This paradox shows up everywhere. In design, simplicity is often the hardest aesthetic to achieve. A minimalist space isn't created by adding more. It's created by carefully subtracting, by ensuring that every element serves a purpose. In business, the most user-friendly products, those that feel intuitive and obvious, are often the result of relentless iteration, testing, and refinement. Even in life, simplicity isn't handed to you. It takes effort to declutter your home, to prioritize your time, to focus on what truly matters. Complexity creeps in naturally through distractions, obligations, and the endless temptation to add more. Simplicity, on the other hand, requires vigilance and intention. But why does simplicity matter? Because it creates clarity, focus, and meaning. A simple message cuts through the noise. A simple design delights and engages. A simple life brings peace and fulfillment. Simplicity isn't about having less. It's about making room for what matters most. Yet, simplicity doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean removing everything until nothing is left. True simplicity embraces imperfection and humanity. It's not about sterilizing life or work. It's about finding balance, about creating something that feels effortless but is deeply intentional. So how do you live the paradox of simplicity? Start by embracing the idea that less is often more. Whether you're creating, problem-solving, or organizing your life, resist the urge to add. Instead, ask yourself, what can I remove to make this clearer, more meaningful, more focused? Don't be afraid of the work it takes to simplify. Cutting through the clutter isn't easy. It requires patience, trial, and error, and the willingness to make tough decisions. But the result is worth it. Clarity, elegance, and impact. And most importantly, practice saying no. Complexity often comes from taking on too much, from saying yes to every opportunity, idea, or demand. Simplicity is the courage to prioritize, to focus on what truly aligns with your values and goals. The paradox of simplicity teaches you that less isn't less. It's freedom. It's clarity of thought, focus of effort, and the ability to fully engage with what matters most. And while it may take more effort to achieve, the rewards are profound. So embrace the effort it takes to simplify. Strip away the unnecessary, refine what remains, and trust that what's left will be stronger, clearer, and more meaningful. In the end, simplicity isn't just an aesthetic. It's a way of thinking, a way of living, and a way of creating that lets the essential shine through. The paradox of memory. You close your eyes and think back to a moment, maybe a childhood summer, a meaningful conversation, or the first time you fell in love. It feels vivid, real, like you're replaying a film stored in your mind. But here's the unsettling truth. The memory you're holding on to isn't the same one you created. Each time you recall it, you subtly rewrite it, reshaping the past without even realizing it. This is the paradox of memory, the fascinating, almost unsettling idea that the act of remembering doesn't preserve your past. It alters it. What you think of as a fixed record of your life is more like a story you revise every time you revisit it. At first, this seems impossible. Surely your memories are reliable, stored like files on a hard drive, ready to be retrieved exactly as they happened. But that's not how memory works. Each time you recall a moment, your brain doesn't simply replay it, it reconstructs it. It pieces together fragments of sights, sounds, emotions, and impressions, weaving them into a narrative that feels real but is far from objective. Think about a memory you've shared with someone else, a family vacation, a school event, or even a shared joke. Chances are, their version of the memory is different from yours. Maybe they remember details you don't, or they interpret the same event in a completely different way. Both versions feel true, but neither is identical to what actually happened. The paradox lies in how memory changes over time. When you recall a memory, it becomes malleable, vulnerable to influence. New emotions, perspectives, or information can seep in, subtly reshaping the memory before it's stored again. The more you recall it, the more it drifts from the original moment. In a sense, your past is alive, constantly evolving with your present. But this isn't just a quirk of memory, it's a reflection of who you are. Memory isn't about preserving the past, it's about helping you make sense of your life. Your brain doesn't store memories to archive them. It stores them to serve your needs in the moment. That's why you might idealize certain memories, turning them into sources of comfort, or distort painful ones, softening their edges to protect yourself. This isn't to say your memories are lies. They're just subjective, shaped by the lens through which you view them. If you revisit a memory when you're feeling nostalgic, it might feel warm and golden. Revisit the same memory in a moment of regret, and it might take on a bittersweet hue. The memory itself hasn't changed, but your perception of it has, and that perception reshapes how you store it. The paradox of memory also explains why your relationship with the past is so fluid. You're not tethered to your memories, you're constantly reinterpreting them. This can be both a blessing and a challenge. It means you can find new meaning in old experiences, reframing painful moments as lessons or seeing past joys in a new light. But it also means your past is never as fixed or certain as you might believe. This paradox has profound implications for how you live your life. It reminds you that the stories you tell yourself about your past aren't set in stone. If a memory is holding you back, an old failure, a painful mistake, you have the power to revisit it, to see it differently, to rewrite it in a way that empowers you. At the same time, it challenges you to question the reliability of your own perspective. If your memories are fluid, so are everyone else's. When you argue about what really happened, you're often debating two equally subjective versions of the past. The paradox invites you to approach these moments with empathy, recognizing that no one holds the definitive truth. So, how do you live the paradox of memory? Start by embracing the idea that your past is a story you co-create with time. Revisit your memories not as fixed snapshots, but as evolving narratives, open to reinterpretation. When a painful memory resurfaces, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I see this in a way that serves me now? And when you share memories with others, approach them with curiosity rather than certainty. Listen to their version of events and notice how it enriches or challenges your own. The paradox of memory reminds you that your past isn't a prison. It's a canvas. Each time you recall it, you're adding brushstrokes, shaping the picture in ways that reflect who you are today. Embrace that fluidity. Use it to let go of what no longer serves you, to cherish what does, and to create a relationship with your past that empowers your present. Because in the end, memory isn't about holding on to the past. It's about helping you move forward, carrying the lessons, the beauty, and the meaning you've discovered along the way. The paradox of tolerance. You pride yourself on being open-minded, on creating space for different ideas, beliefs, and perspectives. After all, isn't tolerance the foundation of a just and harmonious society? But then you encounter a belief or behavior so intolerant, so fundamentally opposed to the principles of acceptance and coexistence that it challenges everything you stand for. Should you tolerate it? Or by tolerating it, do you risk undermining the very values that tolerance is meant to protect? This is the paradox of tolerance, the unsettling truth that tolerating everything, including intolerance, can destroy tolerance itself. A line must be drawn, not to contradict the principles of tolerance, but to preserve them. At first, this paradox seems impossible to resolve. Tolerance is often framed as absolute, a principle that requires accepting all perspectives, no matter how extreme. But absolute tolerance is a trap. If you allow intolerant ideologies to grow unchecked, they can erode the freedoms that make tolerance possible, replacing coexistence with dominance and oppression. The paradox becomes clear when you look at history. Time and again, societies that prized openness and diversity have faced threats from intolerant ideologies, whether it's authoritarian regimes, hate groups, or discriminatory movements. These forces exploit tolerance, using the very freedoms they seek to dismantle as a shield for their actions. Left unchallenged, they grow stronger, eventually silencing the voices of tolerance and diversity they once relied on. The philosopher Karl Popper articulated this paradox in his work, The Open Society and Its Enemies. He argued that a truly tolerant society cannot remain tolerant if it tolerates intolerance. Tolerance, he said, must have limits, not to suppress dissent or disagreement, but to protect the conditions that allow tolerance to exist in the first place. The tension lies in deciding where to draw the line. It's not about silencing unpopular opinions or avoiding uncomfortable conversations. Healthy debate, even between opposing views, is essential for growth and understanding. But when a belief or behavior actively threatens the safety, dignity, or freedoms of others, tolerating it becomes self-destructive. Think about freedom of speech, one of the cornerstones of tolerance. Should that freedom extend to hate speech, to calls for violence, to ideologies that seek to strip others of their rights? Some argue that even offensive ideas should be allowed, trusting that open debate will discredit them. Others contend that allowing such speech creates fertile ground for intolerance to grow, ultimately putting vulnerable communities at risk. This isn't just a philosophical dilemma, it's a real-world challenge. Social media platforms wrestle with it daily, balancing the value of free expression with the harm caused by misinformation and hate speech. Communities face it when deciding how to handle disruptive voices that push the boundaries of respect and decency. But the paradox of tolerance isn't about shutting down disagreement or forcing conformity. It's about protecting the principles of fairness, equality, and respect that make a tolerant society possible. It's about recognizing that tolerance isn't passive. It requires action, vigilance, and sometimes the courage to say, "This is where we draw the line." The paradox also teaches you something profound about balance. Absolute tolerance leads to chaos, but absolute intolerance leads to oppression. The challenge lies in finding the middle ground, in creating a society where diverse voices can coexist without allowing those who reject coexistence to dominate. So, how do you live the paradox of tolerance? Start by defining your values. What principles are non-negotiable for you? What behaviors or beliefs cross the line from disagreement into harm? Being clear about your boundaries helps you navigate the tension between openness and protection. Next, practice discernment. Not every disagreement is a threat, and not every unpopular opinion is intolerant. Look for intent and impact. Is someone expressing their beliefs in good faith, or are they using their platform to harm others? Respond accordingly, with dialogue when possible, and with firm boundaries when necessary. And most importantly, remember that tolerance requires courage. It's easy to let intolerance grow unchecked, to avoid conflict in the name of peace. But true tolerance isn't passive, it's active, a commitment to protecting the values that allow diversity and freedom to flourish. The paradox of tolerance reminds you that lines must be drawn, not out of fear, but out of love for what's worth protecting. Tolerance isn't about accepting everything. It's about creating a world where respect, dignity, and justice can thrive. So stand firm in your values. Be open to others, but don't shy away from the responsibility to protect the principles that matter most. Because in the end, true tolerance isn't about letting everything in. It's about ensuring that what you let in helps build a society where everyone can belong. The paradox of time travel? You step into the time machine. heart racing, ready to rewrite the past. Maybe you'll stop a catastrophe, prevent a mistake, or even meet a younger version of yourself. But as you take that fateful step into the timeline, a question looms. If I change the past, what happens to the present? And if I erase the events that led me here, how do I exist at all? This is the paradox of time travel, the mind-bending puzzle that forces you to rethink everything you know about causality, existence, and the flow of time. At its core is a simple but profound question. If the past can be altered, what keeps reality from unraveling? Consider the classic example of the grandfather paradox. Suppose you travel back in time and prevent your grandfather from meeting your grandmother. Without their union, you would never be born. But if you were never born, how did you travel back in time to stop them in the first place? It's a loop that defies logic, a snake eating its own tail. The paradox lies in causality, the principle that every effect has a cause. Time, as we experience it, flows in one direction. The present is shaped by the past, and the future emerges from the present. But time travel turns causality on its head. If the future can influence the past, where does the chain of events begin? Science fiction loves to play with this idea, but it's not just a fantastical concept. It's a serious question for physicists and philosophers alike. In a universe governed by cause and effect, how can time loops or altered timelines coexist? Do they create alternate realities, branching timelines, or simply collapse under the weight of their contradictions? The paradox forces you to grapple with the very nature of time. Is it a fixed sequence of events, unchangeable and immutable? Or is it fluid, with every choice and action creating ripples that reshape reality? If time can be rewritten, does that mean our lives are nothing more than shifting stories, constantly being edited by future selves we can't yet imagine? But the paradox of time travel isn't just about physics, it's about identity. If you go back and change the events that made you who you are, do you remain the same person? If you erase your mistakes, do you also erase the lessons they taught you? There's also the unsettling question of free will. If the future has already happened, and someone from that future can alter the past, does that mean your choices were never really your own? Or does time travel simply reveal the illusion of control, showing us that we're part of a web of events far more complex than we can comprehend? Think of the stories that explore these themes. In Back to the Future, A Simple Intervention, Marty McFly, preventing his parents' first meeting, threatens his own existence, forcing him to fix what he accidentally disrupted. In The Terminator, the battle between past and future becomes a question of predestination versus change. Each narrative dances around the same paradox. Can you escape causality, or are you bound by the very events you seek to change? So, how do you make sense of the paradox of time travel? One approach is the idea of self-consistency. In this view, any changes you make to the past were always part of the timeline. If you go back and save someone's life, it's because you were always meant to do so. The timeline is fixed, and your actions simply fulfill what was already destined to happen. Another possibility is the branching timeline theory, where every change creates a new, parallel reality. In this version, you can alter events without erasing yourself, but you might find yourself in a world that's no longer your own. And then there's the unsettling idea that time travel itself is impossible, not because we can't figure out the physics, but because the universe simply doesn't allow paradoxes to exist. Reality might enforce its own rules, preventing any action that could disrupt causality. The paradox of time. Travel challenges you to think beyond the linear, to question not just how time works, but how your choices ripple through the world. It invites you to consider that every action, no matter how small, is part of a vast interconnected web of cause and effect. In the end, the paradox teaches you that time isn't just a measure of moments. It's a mystery, a puzzle that reveals the limits of your understanding while expanding your sense of possibility. And maybe that's the real lesson, not to master time, but to marvel at its complexity, to live fully in the present while respecting the infinite threads that connect past, present, and future. So, step into the time machine, if only in your imagination. Let the paradox remind you that life's greatest mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be explored one moment at a time. The observer effect paradox. You watch a child playing freely in the park, completely absorbed in their own world. But as soon as they notice you're watching, something shifts. Their movements become self-conscious, their focus broken by the awareness of your gaze. It's subtle, but undeniable. The act of observing changes what's being observed. This is the observer effect paradox. The idea that simply by paying attention to something, you alter its nature. It's not just a quirk of human behavior. It's a phenomenon that spans everything from relationships to quantum physics, forcing you to question whether true objectivity is ever possible. In science, the observer effect is most famously illustrated in quantum mechanics. Electrons, when unobserved, exist in a state of probability, a cloud of potential positions. But the moment you measure them, they choose a specific location or state. In trying to observe their nature, you inevitably change it. It's as if reality itself bends to the act of observation, raising unsettling questions about the relationship between the observer and the observed. But the paradox isn't limited to the microscopic world. It's everywhere. Think about how people act when they know they're being watched. Whether it's a student under the gaze of a teacher, an employee during a performance review, or a stranger caught on camera, behavior shifts in response to the awareness of being observed. The spontaneity that comes with freedom is replaced by calculated choices, often aimed at managing how they're perceived. Even in intimate relationships, the observer effect plays out. When you watch someone closely, trying to decipher their thoughts, predict their actions, or understand their emotions, you subtly influence how they behave. Your attention, no matter how well-intentioned, creates an invisible pressure that can shape their responses. The paradox lies in its inevitability. You observe because you want to understand, to connect, to learn. But the very act of observing creates a barrier between you and the truth. What you see is no longer untouched. It's been filtered through the awareness of your attention. This has profound implications for how you navigate the world. In science, it reminds us that there's no such thing as a truly passive observer. The tools we use to measure the universe inevitably shape the data we collect. In relationships, it challenges the idea of objectivity, showing us that our presence always influences the dynamics we're trying to understand. The paradox also teaches you something about control. When you try too hard to observe or manage something, whether it's a scientific phenomenon, a person, or even your own thoughts, you risk distorting it. Observation becomes interference, and your quest for clarity creates complexity instead. But the observer effect paradox isn't just about limitations, it's about possibilities. If your attention shapes what you observe, then it's a reminder of your power to influence the world around you. Your gaze, your focus, your awareness, they're not neutral. They're tools you can use to guide, shape, and co-create reality. So how do you live the paradox? Start by recognizing that observation is never passive. Whether you're studying the stars or watching a loved one, your attention carries weight. Approach it with humility, knowing that your presence alters what you see. In relationships, practice mindful observation. Instead of scrutinizing or overanalyzing, create space for authenticity. Let others feel seen without feeling judged. And when you notice your attention influencing their behavior, use it as an opportunity to reflect. Am I observing to understand or to control? In your own life, notice how self-observation shapes your actions. When you reflect on your thoughts or behaviors, do you approach yourself with curiosity or criticism? The way you observe yourself can either stifle growth or encourage it. The observer effect paradox reminds you that seeing isn't a one-way street. You're not just a witness to the world, you're a participant, shaping what you see by how you see it. It's a call to approach observation with care, to balance curiosity with respect, and to embrace the dynamic interplay between the observer and the observed. In the end, the paradox teaches you that reality isn't fixed, it's fluid, shaped by the act of noticing. And while you may never see the world as it is untouched, you can choose to see it with intention, with empathy, and with the understanding that observation is as much about what's within you as what's in front of you. The paradox of security. You lock the doors, set the alarms, double-check the bolts. You take every precaution to ensure your safety, convinced that each added layer of security will bring peace of mind. Yet, instead of feeling secure, you find yourself more anxious. Every sound becomes suspicious, every stranger a potential threat. The more secure you try to make your life, the more dangers you seem to perceive. This is the paradox of security, the unsettling truth that in chasing absolute safety, you can create a false sense of vulnerability. Instead of protecting you, excessive focus on security can amplify your fears, leaving you more aware of what could go wrong than what is actually right. At its core, this paradox stems from a fundamental truth. No life is completely risk-free. Trying to eliminate all danger is not only impossible, but counterproductive. The more you focus on controlling every possible threat, the more your attention fixates on what could go wrong. Security measures meant to reassure you end up heightening your awareness of potential danger. Think about the rise of surveillance technology. Cameras on every street corner, password-protected everything, and constant monitoring are designed to make you feel safe. Yet, living in a state of perpetual vigilance often fosters a sense of unease. If so much protection is necessary, you wonder, how dangerous must the world truly be? The paradox also reveals itself in personal relationships. You build walls, emotionally or otherwise, to protect yourself from betrayal or harm. You avoid vulnerability, believing it keeps you safe, but in doing so, you isolate yourself, cutting off the very connections that bring joy and meaning to life. Your efforts to feel secure end up leaving you lonely and guarded. The same applies to broader systems. Nations that pursue absolute security often find themselves in a perpetual state of tension. Arms races, preemptive strikes, and surveillance states may deter immediate threats, but they create an environment of constant suspicion where the perception of danger becomes as destabilizing as actual conflict. Why does this happen? Because the more secure you try to make something, the more you remind yourself of its fragility. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. The pursuit of safety heightens your awareness of risk, which fuels the need for even greater security. It's like trying to patch a dam that isn't leaking. Each patch only makes you notice new places where the water might break through. But the paradox of security isn't about abandoning caution. Security is important. It creates stability and allows you to navigate life with confidence. The paradox teaches you not to mistake security for control. Life will always involve uncertainty, and true security comes not from eliminating every risk, but from learning to live with the unknown. So how do you live this paradox? Start by shifting your mindset. Instead of focusing solely on preventing harm, cultivate resilience. Build the confidence that you can handle challenges if and when they arise. This shifts your attention from fear to strength, helping you feel secure without needing everything to be perfect. In relationships, lower the walls. Instead of avoiding vulnerability, lean into it with discernment. True connection requires trust, and while that trust carries risk, it also brings the kind of emotional security that no amount of defensiveness can provide. In your daily life, reflect on your security habits. Are they helping you feel safer, or are they reinforcing a sense of danger? Let go of measures that add stress without real benefit. Simplify where you can and focus on what truly matters. The paradox also invites you to embrace a broader perspective. Absolute safety is an illusion. Life is inherently unpredictable, but within that unpredictability lies freedom, growth, and meaning. Accepting uncertainty allows you to live more fully without being paralyzed by fear. The paradox of security reminds you that real safety doesn't come from controlling every outcome. It comes from trust. Trust in yourself, trust in others, and trust in the world's capacity to hold both risk and reward. By embracing this balance, you can move beyond the false comfort of absolute security and into a life where resilience, connection, and adaptability are your greatest safeguards. In the end, security isn't about building impenetrable walls. It's about creating a foundation strong enough to weather life's storms without needing to fear them. And in that space of trust, you'll find a peace that no amount of alarms or locks could ever provide. The paradox of effort. You sit down, determined to relax. Maybe you're at the end of a long day or trying to quiet your mind during meditation. You tell yourself, just let go, relax. But the more you focus on it, the harder it feels. Your shoulders stay tense, your mind races, and your effort to relax only deepens the tension. This is the paradox of effort, the frustrating truth that the harder you try to relax, the more elusive relaxation becomes. True ease doesn't come from trying, it comes from letting go of the need to try at all. It's a paradox because effort is ingrained in you as the solution to nearly every challenge. Work harder, focus more, push through. That's how you're taught to solve problems. But relaxation isn't a problem to be solved. It's a state to be allowed. The more you force it, the further away it drifts, like trying to grab water with a clenched fist. Think of the times you've tried to fall asleep. You lie in bed, repeating, "I need to sleep. Why can't I sleep?" Your mind spins faster, your body stiffens, and sleep feels impossible. It's only when you surrender to the moment, when you stop trying and let yourself simply be, that sleep gently takes over. The paradox lies in the nature of effort itself. Effort creates tension. It engages your muscles, sharpens your focus, and heightens your awareness, all useful in tasks that require action. But relaxation is the opposite of action. It's the absence of tension, the release of control. Trying to force it is like running harder to slow down. It works against the very thing you're seeking. This isn't just about physical relaxation. The paradox applies to mental and emotional states as well. When you try too hard to feel happy, confident, or at peace, the effort itself creates resistance. Happiness becomes elusive, confidence feels forced, and peace is replaced by frustration. The paradox of effort also reveals a deeper truth about control. You want to control your mind, your body, your emotions, to will them into the state you desire. But control and relaxation are incompatible. Relaxation happens when you release control, when you trust your body and mind to find their natural equilibrium. Consider moments when you've truly felt relaxed. They often happen spontaneously, while lying in the sun, listening to music, or losing yourself in a good book. You weren't trying to relax, you were simply present, allowing the moment to unfold without effort or expectation. This paradox challenges you to rethink your approach to relaxation. Instead of treating it as a task, approach it as a practice of letting go. Stop trying to force calmness and start creating the conditions where calmness can arise naturally. How do you do this? Start by noticing the effort itself. When you catch yourself trying to relax, pause and ask, "What am I holding on to? What can I release?" Often, it's not the act of relaxation that's difficult, but your attachment to achieving it. Let go of the need for a specific outcome and focus instead on the process. Next, shift your attention. Instead of focusing on relaxing, focus on something neutral, your breath, a sound, or a simple physical sensation. By redirecting your mind away from the effort, you create space for relaxation to emerge. And most importantly, practice patience. Relaxation isn't instant, and it's not something you can force on demand. It's a process that unfolds when you stop rushing it. Give yourself permission to simply be without judgment or expectation. The paradox of effort also holds a powerful lesson about life. Just as relaxation happens when you stop trying, many of life's most fulfilling experiences arise when you let go of control. Joy, creativity, connection, they flourish in spaces of openness, not in the grip of effort. In the end, the paradox of effort reminds you that some things can't be achieved through force. Relaxation, like trust, happiness, or love, is a state of surrender, not a product of willpower. The more you release the need to make it happen, the more easily it finds you. So breathe, let go of trying, and let the moment carry you. Trust that relaxation, like all states of ease, will come, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. And in that surrender, you'll find the peace that effort could never deliver. The paradox of wealth. You dream of wealth, a life free from worry, where every desire is within reach. Money, you believe, will unlock freedom, comfort, and happiness. And so, you work harder, save diligently, and chase success, all in the hope of reaching that magical point where you can finally relax. But the more wealth you accumulate, the more elusive that freedom feels. This is the paradox of wealth, the unsettling truth that while money promises freedom, it often ensnares people in an endless cycle of striving for more. True wealth, it turns out, doesn't come from accumulation, but from contentment, from knowing when enough is truly enough. At first, this paradox seems absurd. Isn't money the key to independence? Doesn't wealth give you the power to live life on your own terms? In some ways, it does. Financial security provides stability and opens doors to opportunities. But beyond a certain point, the pursuit of more money often creates its own burdens. Think about the cost of chasing wealth. Long hours at work, stress, and the sacrifice of time with loved ones, all to build a bank account that promises a brighter future. But as your earnings grow, so do your desires. The dream house becomes a bigger house, the comfortable car becomes a luxury car, and the simple pleasures of life are replaced by the constant pursuit of the next upgrade. The paradox lies in this: the more you focus on accumulating wealth, the more your life becomes about managing, protecting, and growing it. Instead of freeing you, money can become a source of anxiety. What if you lose it? What if it's not enough? The very thing that promised liberation can become a golden cage. This isn't to say money is unimportant. It's a tool, a means to meet your needs, support your loved ones, and pursue meaningful goals. But when money becomes the goal itself, it distorts your priorities. You start measuring success by numbers rather than experiences, relationships, or personal growth. The paradox of wealth also reveals something profound about human nature. Accumulation isn't just about security, it's about comparison. You don't just want to have enough, you want to have more than others. This constant comparison creates a moving target where satisfaction is always just out of reach. Yet the paradox also offers a solution, shifting your definition of wealth. True wealth isn't about how much you have. It's about how much you appreciate what you have. It's about living within your means, finding joy in simplicity, and focusing on what money can't buy: love, connection, purpose, and time. Think of the people who seem truly rich in spirit. They're not always the ones with the biggest bank accounts. They're the ones who know how to savor life's simple pleasures, who value experiences over possessions, and who understand that happiness doesn't come from having it all, but from appreciating what you have. So, how do you live the paradox of wealth? Start by redefining what wealth means to you. Is it a number in your bank account, or is it the freedom to spend time with your loved ones? Is it about acquiring more, or is it about finding peace with what you already have? Next, practice gratitude. Gratitude is the antidote to the endless pursuit of more. When you focus on what you're thankful for, you shift your attention from scarcity to abundance, from what's missing to what's already present. And most importantly, set boundaries around your relationship with money. Work hard, save wisely, but don't let wealth define your worth or dictate your life. Remember that your time, energy, and relationships are the most valuable currencies you have. The paradox of wealth reminds you that money is a tool, not a destination. It can provide comfort and opportunity, but it can't fill the deeper voids of life. True wealth lies in contentment, in knowing when you have enough, and in valuing what truly matters. So, pause, step back, and ask yourself, what does wealth mean to me? If the answer is more than numbers, if it's about freedom, love, and joy, then you're already richer than you realize. And in that realization, you'll find the kind of wealth that no amount of money could ever buy. The knowledge paradox. You sit down with a book, eager to learn, ready to soak up wisdom. Page by page, the world unfolds before you. Ideas you never considered, histories you never knew, and questions that pull you deeper into the rabbit hole of curiosity. At first, you feel empowered, as if knowledge is a staircase you're climbing toward mastery. But then, somewhere along the way, a strange feeling creeps in. The more you uncover, the more gaps you notice. For every answer you find, 10 new questions arise. You thought you were getting closer to certainty, but now it feels like the ground beneath you is shifting. This is the knowledge paradox, the ironic truth that the more you learn, the more aware you become of how little you truly know. It's humbling, disorienting, and yet strangely beautiful. Think back to when you were a child, when the world seemed so simple. The sun rose and set, trees grew tall, and the stars sparkled at night, all without mystery or complication. But as you grew older, you began to ask why. Why does the sun rise? What makes trees grow? What are those stars? Each question revealed a new layer of understanding, but it also revealed more layers beneath. The universe, once so small and knowable, expanded with every new fact you learned. The paradox lies in this expansion. Knowledge isn't a static thing you collect, like coins in a jar. It's more like a map, one that grows larger and more intricate the more you explore. At first, you're charting a small territory, and it feels manageable. But as you venture further, you realize the map has no edges. It just keeps growing. The horizon of what you don't know moves further away with every step. This paradox has humbled some of history's greatest minds. Socrates famously said, "I know that I know nothing," a statement that reflects not ignorance, but profound awareness. The more he examined life, the more he saw how much there was to understand, and how much of it lay beyond his grasp. It's a truth that can feel overwhelming, even frustrating. When you dive deeply into a subject, whether it's physics, philosophy, art, or history, you might expect to eventually reach some kind of mastery, a final aha moment where everything makes sense. But instead, you find complexity upon complexity. The mysteries don't vanish, they multiply. And yet, this is where the paradox becomes transformative. The realization of how little you know isn't a defeat, it's a doorway. Awareness of your ignorance opens you to curiosity, to humility, to the kind of wisdom that isn't about answers, but about asking better questions. Think of the scientists peering into the depths of space or the intricacies of the human genome. For every breakthrough they achieve, the unknown only grows. They discover new galaxies, but they also discover dark matter and energy, forces they can't yet explain. They unlock the secrets of DNA, but they also uncover complexities in how genes interact, creating puzzles even deeper than the ones they started with. The paradox doesn't discourage them, it drives them. The knowledge paradox also reshapes how you see yourself and others. When you truly grasp how little you know, you become less rigid in your opinions, more open to listening, more willing to say, "I don't know." It tempers arrogance and fosters empathy. After all, if the wisest people admit their ignorance, what right do you have to assume certainty? But there's a catch. The paradox only reveals itself to those who are willing to dive deep. To those who skim the surface of learning, the world might still appear simple, their beliefs unshaken. The paradox requires courage, the courage to keep asking, to keep exploring, even when the answers seem further away than ever. So, what's the lesson here? It's not to give up the pursuit of knowledge, but to embrace it fully, knowing that the journey has no end. The paradox teaches you that wisdom isn't about hoarding facts or reaching conclusions. It's about expanding your perspective, deepening your questions, and finding beauty in the infinite complexity of the world. As you continue to learn, let the knowledge paradox guide you. Let it humble you, inspire you, and remind you that the greatest wisdom lies not in knowing everything, but in marveling at how much there is yet to discover. Because the more you know, the more you realize that the universe, like your own mind, is boundless, mysterious, and endlessly worth exploring. The paradox of choice. You stand in the cereal aisle, confronted by an endless wall of brightly colored boxes, dozens of brands, flavors, and promises of health or indulgence vie for your attention. At first, you're excited by the possibilities, so much to choose from. But as you scan the options, a creeping anxiety sets in. What if you pick the wrong one? What if the brand new honey almond flavor is disappointing? What if you should have stuck with your reliable go-to? After what feels like an eternity, you grab a box at random, more out of exhaustion than conviction, and walk away feeling oddly dissatisfied. This is the paradox of choice. The more options you have, the more freedom you think you'll gain. But in reality, the abundance of choice often leaves you overwhelmed, paralyzed, or regretful. What seems like liberation can quickly become a trap. Think about how often you face this paradox. Streaming platforms with hundreds of movies but nothing to watch. Online stores with infinite products but no clear direction on what's best. Social media feeds filled with glimpses of others' seemingly perfect lives, making you question your own choices. Instead of freedom, the abundance of options leaves you stuck in a loop of indecision and doubt. At its core, the paradox arises because of how your brain processes decisions. When faced with a few choices, the decision feels manageable. You weigh the pros and cons and make a confident choice. But as the number of options grows, so does the mental effort required to evaluate them. You become paralyzed by analysis, consumed by the fear of missing out on the perfect option. Psychologists call this decision fatigue, and it's a real, measurable phenomenon. The mental energy required to choose leaves you drained, making you less happy with the final outcome, no matter what it is. Even after you decide, the paradox doesn't let go. You're haunted by what-ifs. What if the other option was better? What if you missed out? This post-decision regret gnaws at your satisfaction, diminishing whatever joy your choice might have brought. And then there's the weight of responsibility. When you have so many options, the blame for a bad decision feels heavier. After all, you had so much freedom. How could you have chosen wrong? The paradox of choice doesn't just affect individuals, it shapes how we live as a society. In a world that celebrates abundance and consumerism, the promise of more choices is seen as a hallmark of progress. But is it really? Research shows that people in simpler, less choice-saturated environments often report higher levels of contentment. Why? Because fewer choices mean fewer opportunities for regret, fewer what-ifs to haunt their decisions, and more mental space to focus on what truly matters. So how do you navigate this paradox? The answer lies not in rejecting choice altogether, but in simplifying it. Limit the options you consider. Set boundaries for your decision-making. For example, instead of endlessly scrolling through a streaming platform, commit to the first 5 movies you see. Instead of agonizing over dozens of menu options, stick to what you know you'll enjoy. By narrowing the field, you regain a sense of control and reduce the emotional toll of choosing. But the paradox goes even deeper than decision-making. It challenges you to rethink what happiness and freedom really mean. Is happiness about having everything you could ever want? Or is it about being content with what you have? The paradox of choice suggests that true freedom isn't about unlimited options. It's about clarity, focus, and the ability to appreciate the choices you make without second-guessing them. This isn't just about cereal aisles or streaming platforms. It's about life. Your career, relationships, passions, all are shaped by the choices you make. The paradox teaches you that simplifying those choices doesn't limit your life. It enriches it. By cutting through the noise, you create space to fully embrace the paths you choose, knowing that the joy comes not from perfection, but from presence. So the next time you're faced with an overwhelming number of options, remember, freedom isn't about choosing everything. It's about choosing enough. By simplifying your life, you unlock the deeper satisfaction that abundance can never provide. And in that simplicity, you discover that happiness isn't found in having it all. It's found in truly living with what you have. The paradox of vulnerability. You're standing at the edge of a conversation, hesitating. A part of you wants to open up, to share what you're truly feeling, the fear, the doubt, the ache you've carried for too long. But another voice inside stops you. What if they judge me? What if they use it against me? What if showing weakness makes me lose respect? So you hold back, shielded by a carefully crafted mask, safe but alone. This is the paradox of vulnerability. It whispers that opening yourself to others is dangerous, that sharing your fears, flaws, and failures will only expose you to harm. And yet, the opposite is true. Vulnerability, far from being a weakness, is the foundation of genuine strength. It's the gateway to intimacy, trust, and connection, the very things that make life worth living. Think about the moments when you felt most deeply connected to someone. Was it during casual small talk, or when they shared something real, something raw? Maybe it was the friend who confided in you about their struggles, or the partner who admitted their fears. In those moments, their vulnerability didn't repel you. It drew you closer. Their openness wasn't a sign of weakness, it was a demonstration of courage. And yet, when it comes to your own vulnerability, the walls go up. Why? Because being vulnerable means taking a risk. It means stepping into the unknown, exposing the parts of yourself that feel unworthy or imperfect, and hoping the other person will respond with understanding rather than rejection. That fear of rejection is primal. It's wired into you as a survival instinct, a relic of a time when belonging to a group was a matter of life or death. But here's the paradox. The very armor you wear to protect yourself is what keeps you disconnected. The walls you build to keep out hurt also keep out love, trust, and connection. You may feel safe, but you also feel isolated. Vulnerability, as uncomfortable as it is the bridge that connects you to others. This paradox isn't just emotional, it's biological. Research shows that sharing vulnerability activates parts of the brain associated with bonding and empathy. When you reveal your true self, you invite others to do the same, creating a feedback loop of trust and closeness. It's why shared struggles bring people together, why admitting, "I don't know," in a group can spark collaboration, and why stories of failure are often more inspiring than tales of perfection. But vulnerability doesn't just connect you to others, it connects you to yourself. When you deny your fears and flaws, you fragment your sense of self, pushing away the parts that feel unworthy. Embracing vulnerability means accepting all of who you are, not just the polished, presentable version. It means recognizing that your worth isn't tied to being perfect, it's tied to being real. Of course, the paradox doesn't mean you should share your innermost secrets with just anyone. Vulnerability is a gift, and not everyone deserves it. Trust must be built, and boundaries are essential. But the lesson here is that true strength doesn't come from never showing weakness. It comes from choosing when and how to let your guard down. The paradox also reveals something profound about courage. We often think of bravery as facing danger or overcoming external challenges, but perhaps the bravest thing you can do is face yourself and let others see you as you are. Vulnerability is daring to say, "This is me. These are my cracks, my scars, my fears. Take me or leave me." And in that moment, you discover an unshakable strength, the freedom of being unapologetically authentic. So, what does this paradox teach you? It's that vulnerability isn't a burden. It's a gift. It's not a flaw to hide, but a strength to embrace. In opening yourself to others, you don't lose power. You gain connection. You don't risk everything. You invite the possibility of everything that matters. And yes, being vulnerable is terrifying, but it's also transformative. It's the space where relationships deepen, where trust grows, and where you discover that you're not alone in your fears and struggles. It's where intimacy lives, not in the polished perfection of invulnerability, but in the messy, beautiful truth of being human. So the next time you feel the urge to hide behind your armor, consider this: true strength isn't in never falling. It's in daring to let someone see you when you do. And in that moment of vulnerability, you may just find the connection, courage, and love you've been seeking all along. The productivity paradox. You sit at your desk, determined to conquer the mountain of tasks before you. Coffee in hand, to-do list in front of you, you dive in, pushing harder and harder as the hours tick by. But as the day drags on, something unsettling happens. Your focus starts to fray. The tasks take longer than they should, mistakes creep in, and frustration builds. Despite working harder than ever, you feel like you're falling behind. This is the productivity paradox, the counterintuitive reality that working harder doesn't always mean achieving more. In fact, the harder you push without rest or balance, the less productive you often become. It's a maddening truth in a world that glorifies hustle, rewards busyness, and tells you that success comes from grinding until you've got nothing left. Think about it. How many times have you stayed up late to finish a project, only to spend twice as long the next day fixing sloppy mistakes, or worked through your lunch break, convinced you couldn't afford to stop, only to find yourself staring blankly at the screen an hour later, unable to think straight. The paradox lies in the fact that productivity isn't about sheer effort. It's about how you manage your energy, time, and focus. At its core, this paradox emerges from a simple truth. You're not a machine. Your brain and body have limits. When you push past them without rest, you don't just exhaust yourself, you sabotage your ability to think clearly, solve problems, and make decisions. It's why studies consistently show that overwork leads to diminishing returns. Beyond a certain point, every extra hour you spend working is an hour of less effective, less inspired effort. Ironically, the things that seem unproductive, rest, breaks, leisure, are the very things that fuel true productivity. When you step away from your work, your brain doesn't shut off. It shifts into a different mode, one that fosters creativity and problem solving. It's why great ideas often come when you're walking, showering, or daydreaming, not when you're glued to your desk. Rest isn't laziness, it's a strategic recharge. But the paradox doesn't stop at rest. It also challenges the myth of multitasking. You might think juggling multiple tasks makes you more efficient, but in reality, it splits your attention and drains your mental resources. Each time you switch tasks, your brain has to refocus, wasting precious time and energy. True productivity comes from focus, giving your full attention to one thing at a time. The productivity paradox also reveals the importance of balance. Imagine trying to sprint a marathon. No matter how motivated you are, you'll burn out before you reach the finish line. Productivity works the same way. It's not about going full throttle all the time. It's about finding a sustainable pace. Balance isn't just nice to have. It's essential for long-term success. This paradox isn't just about work. It's about life. The constant push for productivity seeps into every corner of your existence, making you feel like you need to optimize every moment, every activity. But what's the cost? Relationships, hobbies, even your health can fall by the wayside when productivity becomes an obsession. The paradox teaches you that true efficiency isn't about doing everything. It's about doing the right things and doing them well. So how do you break free from the productivity paradox? The first step is shifting your mindset. Productivity isn't about how much you do. It's about the value of what you do. Rest isn't the enemy of productivity. It's a crucial part of it. And balance isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Start by embracing the power of rest. Take breaks, even when it feels counterintuitive. Protect your sleep like it's a non-negotiable meeting with your future self. Learn to say no to tasks that don't align with your goals, and yes to the things that recharge you. And most importantly, focus on what truly matters. Productivity isn't about checking boxes or crossing items off a list. It's about moving the needle on the things that bring meaning and purpose to your life. By prioritizing what matters most, you not only become more efficient, but you also find the fulfillment that busyness alone can never provide. The paradox, in the end, is a reminder that you're human, not a machine. Your greatest productivity doesn't come from pushing harder. It comes from working smarter, resting deeply, and living fully. So, step back, breathe, and remember, sometimes the most productive thing you can do is nothing at all. The paradox of freedom. Imagine standing in an open field, stretching endlessly in every direction. There are no fences, no paths, no rules, just infinite space and endless possibilities. At first, it feels exhilarating. this unbridled freedom to go anywhere, do anything. But as you take a step, then another, something unexpected happens. You hesitate. With no landmarks or boundaries to guide you, every direction feels equally overwhelming. Instead of liberation, you're paralyzed by the weight of unlimited choice. This is the paradox of freedom. It's the unsettling truth that while we crave absolute freedom, its absence of structure can leave us lost. True freedom, as counterintuitive as it seems, isn't about having no limits. It's about having the right ones. Discipline, boundaries, and self-restraint aren't constraints. They're the tools that allow freedom to flourish. Think of a musician sitting at a piano. The keys are limitless in their combinations, yet without the discipline of practice and the structure of musical theory, the player's freedom to create is meaningless. True artistry comes not from pressing random keys, but from working within the framework of rules to craft something beautiful. Freedom without discipline is noise. Freedom with discipline is music. The paradox plays out in every corner of life. Unlimited freedom sounds like paradise, but in reality, it often breeds chaos. Without boundaries, relationships falter, work spirals out of control, and personal growth stalls. Imagine living a life where you could eat whatever you wanted, do whatever you pleased, and follow every whim without consequence. At first, it might feel indulgent, even joyful, but over time, the lack of structure would lead to instability, health problems, unfinished goals, a sense of drifting without purpose. The paradox becomes clearer when you think about freedom in the context of society. Rules, laws, and norms exist to protect individual freedoms from colliding with one another. A society without traffic laws, for example, might seem like a symbol of freedom, but it would devolve into chaos. Roads would become battlegrounds, and the very freedom to drive where you want would vanish in the ensuing disorder. Boundaries, far from restricting freedom, are what make it possible for everyone to coexist. But this paradox isn't just about external rules. It's deeply personal. True freedom isn't about escaping discipline. It's about embracing it. Self-discipline, in particular, is the foundation of autonomy. When you set boundaries for yourself, whether it's committing to a routine, saying no to distractions, or pursuing long-term goals, you create the conditions for real freedom. You're no longer a slave to fleeting desires or external pressures. You're in control of your own path. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are, they're not individuals who lived recklessly without limits. They're the ones who cultivated discipline, who turned constraints into opportunities, who found freedom not in doing whatever they wanted, but in mastering themselves. A writer's freedom to create comes from the discipline of sitting down to write. An athlete's freedom to excel comes from the boundaries they place on their diet and training. But why does freedom feel so paradoxical? Because we've been taught to see discipline and boundaries as opposites of freedom, when in reality, they're its foundation. Unlimited freedom is like water without a container. It spills everywhere, directionless and uncontained. True freedom is water channeled through a riverbed, purposeful and powerful. This paradox also forces you to rethink what freedom truly means. It's not about doing anything you want, anytime you want. It's about the ability to choose what matters most and commit to it. Boundaries aren't prisons, they're paths. Discipline isn't punishment, it's liberation. So how do you embrace the paradox of freedom? Start by redefining freedom for yourself. Recognize that saying no to certain things is what allows you to say yes to what truly matters. Set boundaries that protect your time, energy, and values. Cultivate the discipline to pursue your goals, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. And most importantly, accept that freedom isn't about escaping responsibility. It's about embracing it. True freedom lies not in rejecting limits, but in choosing them wisely. It's the paradox that makes life meaningful, that by creating structure, you unlock the greatest possibility of all, the ability to live fully, purposefully, and freely within the boundaries you've designed. In the end, the paradox of freedom reminds you that the most liberating thing you can do isn't to run from constraints. It's to master them, and in that mastery, you discover a freedom far greater than chaos could ever offer.